So we're going through some turmoil in the markets today. And I remember in 1907, there was a financial meltdown in the U.S. markets. It looked like the U.S. economy was going to collapse. And J.P. Morgan brought together some of the top business people in the country, and they all sat down. And he sat down and he wrote a check. This is in 1907 for $500 million to stabilize the U.S. economy. One man, one financier by himself did it. Now, it's not possible today, but he was asked by the journalist, Mr. Morgan, what's the market going to do? And he said, well, he said, I've given this considerable thought. He said, and I have concluded that the market will fluctuate. And this market will fluctuate. We're going through some very interesting times now. Whenever you have a long period of time, you go through a hangover period, which is what we're going through now, because of too much debt in too many different ways. And it all has to flush itself out of the system. But our market will stabilize. There's still 300 million people who need to eat and drink and go to work and school and have their teeth taken care of. And so business is going to be good in the future. We just have to stay calm. It's really easy to stay calm when everything's calm. It's when things are a little bit turbulent that you need to stay calm. You just take a deep breath and just be cool. Epictetus once said, the Greek philosopher, he said that circumstances do not make the man, they merely reveal him to himself. And so it is not circumstances that make our character, it is how we respond to those circumstances. And all throughout life we'll have problems and difficulties. Anybody here have any problems, by the way? Yeah. Well, it's the way that we deal with our problems, the way that we respond to them. We cannot control the problems. In fact, what we know is life is a continuous succession of problems. Life is I should never have said anything, you know. The guy back there is mad at me now. He's pissed, you know. He's going to keep those lights going up and down for the next hour and a half. Anyway. They say life is a continuous succession of problems, and the only break in this continuous succession of problems is the occasional crisis. And because we're living active lives, according to the numbers, you'll have a crisis about every 2 to 3 months. You'll have a family crisis, or a financial crisis, or a practice crisis, or a physical crisis, but you'll have a crisis about every 2 to 3 months. Which means that, by the way, that everybody in this room is either in a crisis right now, or has just gotten out of a crisis, or just about to have a crisis. So and the only thing you can do is to deal with the crisis effectively. Now, could we put something under here? I'm going to put a box under here. Under here, a box. Oh, good. Oh, thank you. And so how you respond to what happens to you in life is really the critical factor. So I have to ask you a question: what is the most important, highest paid work in America? Well, if you follow what Ed teaches you, it sure can be. The highest, most important work, it's kind of a trick question, is thinking. Thinking is the most important work that we do. Thomas Edison said, thinking is the hardest work of all. That's why most people would rather die than think. And yet thinking is the most important thing you do, because the quality of your thinking determines the quality of your decisions. The quality of your decisions determines the quality of your actions. The quality of your actions determines the quality of your results. And of course, your results determine the quality of your life. In business, the bottom line of everything is results. And the question is, does it work? And does it work, and how well does it work, and how well does it work in comparison with other things? So in business, you have one central focus and one question: does it work, and how well does it work? We say when we talk about business, how much in, how much out, how fast, how sure. Those are the 4 questions that you always ask. And so thinking has the most important results because of one word, and it's one of my favorite words in time management. It's the word consequences. And consequence is a great word because something is important to the degree to which it has potentially serious consequences. Something is unimportant to the degree to which it has low or no consequences. Now, you can always tell important people, because what do important people work on? Things that have potentially important consequences. You'll find that unimportant or unsuccessful people are people who work on things that have low or no consequences. You take the 80-20 rule, which I've studied all my life, as you have. Why is it the top 20% make 80% of the money? Top 10% make 90%. Now, here's the interesting thing, is that life is very much like a marathon. We all start off at the same line, we're all ready to go, and we start running. And everybody's got pretty much the same abilities and the same opportunities. We go to the same schools, we go to the same colleges, and yet some people get way, way ahead. The mass stay in the middle, and some people fall so far behind they think they're first. And so why is this? And well, this has been studied for year after year, and we find that there's one single difference. It's the way you think. I was listening to somebody who grew up in a small town And he was talking about this interesting point. He said he came from a poor family, and there are 3 families in that town that owned everything. They owned the mill, and they owned the factory, and they owned the general store, and they owned the shipping, and they owned the trucking, and they owned the agricultural processing. They owned everything. And these 3 families were rich. They had beautiful homes. Everybody revered them and talked about them, and they were on the bank boards and everything else. And he went to school with the kids from these 3 families. And, everybody wanted to be their friends. Of course, you remember those days. And he found that they were quite normal kids. They weren't very different from anybody else. But somehow these families owned everything. And it was a real shock to him. It wasn't their education, because they weren't getting a better education than he was. They weren't the grades, because the grades were the same. It certainly wasn't their physical attractiveness or anything else. It was just one thing, is they thought differently. They had an attitude of looking for opportunities and possibilities. And what we have found, the series of articles in Inc. magazine, they were interviewing people who'd become fabulously successful, rags to riches stories. Every one of them said, the only reason I succeeded is because I developed the habit of always looking for the opportunity, always looking for something good or positive in what I was doing. Whereas other people, they have a setback and go, oh my God, wah, 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 and they go home and drink and watch television and so on. But successful people are always looking for the opportunity. They think differently. And so when you learn to think better, you make better decisions, you get better results. Interesting question, by the way. Which comes first, thought or emotion? Well, the answer is thought comes first, because according to the University of Pennsylvania, the way you translate something determines how you feel about it. If you translate an event as being a positive event, some people can be going out with a complete jerk, and the jerk breaks up with them and stomps out. And they can say, wow, fabulous, saves me all the problem of doing it. The other person can be decimated and depressed and everything else. Same event, different interpretation. So what they found is the way you interpret or explain things to yourself largely determines how you feel about them. And if you look for the good in everything, if you look for the valuable lesson, if you look for the possibilities, surprise, surprise, you always find something good or something valuable. So how you think is everything. Now here's a good question. What is the role of words in human life? Come on, so this is an easy one. The tough ones come later, okay? What do we use words for? Come on. To communicate. And that was my answer. A psychologist asked me this question, what do we use words for? And I said, to communicate. He said, yes, but there's more than that. He said, a word, he said, is a condensed thought. And a word contains many meanings. Some words can be very rich with meaning and all kinds of interpretations. Take a word like family, as it applies to yourself. Take a word like love, or children, or home, or take a word like freedom, or financial independence, or success. These words are rich words. There's libraries full of books written on these individual subjects. So what they did, starting about more than 50 years ago, is they began just testing this thesis and testing people on how many words they could recognize. Like pays to increase your word power from Reader's Digest. Did you ever read that? And you read it through and you're a little bit kind of disappointed that you missed half of them? You ever had that experience? Wow. Well, what they did is they took people and they just analyzed how many words out of the 4,000. By the way, if you want to know the 4,000 most common words in English, the words that they base the SAT on, the LSAT, all the great tests, you just go to the internet and put it on Google and say 4,000 most common words, and bloop, there it is, and you print it up. And it's about 20 pages, and it just gives you the word and the word meanings. And if you know those words, it'll put you in the top 10%, 5% of Americans living today, just because you know the words. Anyway, so what they did is they tested people, and they asked them, how many words do you recognize? And then they sorted them by socioeconomic level. There's 7 socioeconomic levels in America, by the way. Even though we are an egalitarian society, all societies have hierarchies, and we have a hierarchy. They found the people that knew the lowest number of words were inner city dwellers, and they had an average vocabulary of 400 words. Now, the English dictionary has about 650,000 words, and they knew 400. And some of them were words that are not repeatable in a family publication, and they were used as verbs, nouns, adverbs, and adjectives. Anyway, so then they went to the next level, and they knew more, and they went all the way up, and they found that the people at the highest levels of society recognized the most words. So they said, well, let's test this as a thesis, and they took people out of corporations, people who had certain levels of management, and they just experimented for 1 year. They taught them 5 words a day. An average, say, 1,500 words in the course of a year, and watch what happens to their lives. Well, it was just astonishing. They learned the words so they could recognize them and use them. They were promoted 2 or 3 times. Their income went up 50 to 100%. They were moved up into management. Their social circle changed. The people they hung around with and wasted time with in the evenings changed it completely. They started to associate with people who had higher vocabularies, because you always tend to associate with people who have the same level of vocabulary as yourself. It's almost like cream rises. You start to rise like cream as your vocabulary increases. Now, why does this happen? It's because the more words you know, the better you can think, because you have more tools to think with. You can think with greater subtlety. You can analyze things better. You can make better decisions. So as you learn more words, you actually become smarter. And every brain cell, as you know, is connected to 22,000 other brain cells. So as you learn more words, you connect those with other words, which enable you to see things, to sense things, develops your intuition to a higher level, and it makes you more successful. Now, why do I tell you all this? I'm sure you're fascinated by semantics. It's because when you come to this conference, what you do is you learn concepts. You learn words and concepts and ideas that you may not have thought about before, that open your eyes, like turning on the lights, which we did. They turn on the lights, which enable you to see ways to build your practice that you've never seen before. And the people who build their practices the faster are the ones who learn the most words, or learn the most concepts and ideas. And what I will do in the time we have together is I will share with you a whole bunch of ideas that are kind of like running through a darkened house at night and turning on the light switches, and all the lights go on. I'll give you some ideas that will turn on lights in different rooms. And that's what Ed was going to be doing for the entire time you're here, is constantly turning on light switches and say, do you realize that by doing this, by getting into implants very seriously, by using the internet to generate people, by using referral systems and so on, you can build your practice dramatically. Now, how do we know that these things work? It's because these are the reasons why all other practices grow dramatically. I mean, this is really not rocket science. And I'll talk about that in a couple of seconds. So here's my next question. Who is the most important person here? Well, the answer is you are the most important person here. You are the most important person in your entire world. You are the most important person in the universe to you. If you have a split nail, it's more important than if 100,000 people are washed away by a flood in Bangladesh. Because every person is the center of their own universe. And this is just the way it is. People say people shouldn't be so selfish. That's like saying people shouldn't breathe in and out. You know, the fact is that each human being is self-centered. That's the nature of staying alive. And it's essential for survival. Well, you are the most important person. You were important to your parents when you were born. You're incredibly important. Look at these little children, these little babies. I mean, whoa, geez, they become all important. This is the most incredible transition takes place one day before, one day after you have your first child. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Your whole life changes. It's almost like your whole life is like the first stage of a rocket that falls away when your first child is born. It just falls away, and everything else was kind of preamble. It's kind of like of secondary importance. What's really important is what happens from now on. And so you are very important to your parents. You are very important to your children. You're important to your friends. You're important to your patients. You're important to all the people whose lives you touch. And you're going to get some opportunities to touch some additional lives after I finish speaking. But touching lives makes you one of the most important persons. What do we have coming up in 11 days? Ta-da! Federal election. And I'm not going to talk about politics. You know, it's the problem with the word politics is it comes from the Greek. You know, poly means many, and tix means voracious bloodsuckers. You know, so we won't talk about politics because everybody's got their own idea. But I will just tell you this: if you vote the wrong way, your taxes are going to go way up. Right now, if you vote the wrong way, your taxes are going to be 50 to 60% as an independent business person running a private practice. Anyway, that's if they can get it all through. If they can't get it all through, well, then you'll only be 55%. That's before state taxes and sales taxes and car taxes and other. Anyway, but I'm not going to talk about politics. In the election 11 days from now, you walk into the voting booth and, hey, right next to you, there's Bill Gates. And the other side, there's Warren Buffett. Geez, these guys are the richest people in the United States. How many votes do they get? They get the same number of votes that you have. Your votes are important. You are an important person. Now, the reason I ask you this is because when I learned this, the underpinnings of this concept, it changed my life forever. How important you feel you are largely determines the quality of your life. How important you feel you are, how important and valuable you feel you are as a person, largely determines the quality of your life. It determines how you think about yourself and how you feel. It determines how you treat other people. And the interesting thing is how you treat other people determines how they treat you. It determines your goals you set and how persistent you are in achieving those goals. It determines the amount you discipline yourself, how hard you work. Everything is determined by how important and valuable you feel you are. Now, psychologists call this your level of self-esteem. And your level of self-esteem is like the reactor core of a nuclear generator. It's the power source of your personality. People who have positive personalities have high self-esteem. People who have weak personalities have low self-esteem. And the wonderful thing, as Ed was saying, you can raise your self-esteem by the way you talk to yourself, by the people you associate with, the people you talk to yourself. And so when you say the words, I like myself, your self-esteem goes up. So say it. Say, I like myself. Oh, come on. Take your thumbs out of your mouth. Jeez, it's almost 11 o'clock. Say it like you mean it. Say, I like myself. Wonderful. Now, when you get up in the morning, say, I like myself. I like myself. Throughout the day, say, I like myself. I like myself. Now, there's a lot of people here saying, hey, I'm a graduate in dentistry. We don't say nothing until we thought about it for 3 days. But even if you just listen to someone else saying, I like myself, your self-esteem goes up. You feel good. It's the 3 most positive words in any language. I just was teaching the same thing in Russia a week ago, and in Rome a week ago in Germany. And I'll be in China next week. I can't believe it. I'll be in China on Thursday. And I'll be teaching the same thing in China and throughout China and Malaysia. Because the more you like yourself in any language or culture, the more you like other people. The more you like other people, the more they like you right back. Do you know that 85% of our success or lack of success, happiness or unhappiness in life will be determined by our relationships with other people? 85%. Only 15% is determined on other factors. The other 85% is our relationships. The biggest problems we have in life always come with hair on top. Have you noticed that? But the more you like yourself, the more you like other people. The more you like other people, the more they like you right back. And the more they like you right back, the more they want to use you and come to you, your practice, and to recommend you to others. What is the #1 key to getting referrals? Do you know what it is? Are you ready? It's a toughie. It's be referable. Be referable. How do you be referable? Be a nice person. Do you know what the #1 word used to describe people to whom we refer others to? That he or she is a nice person. They are really nice people. They're really nice people. You know what nice people means? High self-esteem. You walk into a dental practice where the people are grumpy and say, sit down there and we'll call you when you're ready. You know, all right, it's your turn. What's your name? Trashy? No. Tracy? All right, whatever. Get in here. All right. And then the other looks at your teeth and says, oh my God, what a terrible job. Whoever's been working on your teeth before. I mean, you should have come here years ago. It may be too late. I mean. And then you go into another practice and everybody's cheerful and they recognize you and they say, hi, how are you doing? Please sit down. We'll call you in a minute. If there's a delay, they say, I'm sorry, there's a bit of a delay. Can you hang on? Can we get you a glass of water or something? And you sit there and you feel special. So what is the key to building a successful practice? Of course, you must have the technical knowledge, but the key is make patients feel important. Make patients feel important. From the time they come in, make them feel important and make them feel valuable. Raise their self-esteem. And you know what the fastest way to make a person feel important is when they walk into your practice? Smile at them and say, hi, how are you? Thank you for coming. Nice to see you today. How's everything going? So the first impression is like a wave of warmth, and their self-esteem goes up and they feel valuable and important. And the last thing you do is you say, thank you for coming. We sure enjoy having you. We'll look forward to seeing you again. And if it could be of any service to you, please give us a call. And if something comes up, let us know. So the last impression makes them feel important. And in between, treat them like they're the most valuable people in the world. And I promise you, you'll have to turn your phone off to keep people from calling to make appointments, because once you make people feel important, their friends will all want to send people to you. Anyway, it's a small thing, but how much you like yourself is important. Now here's the second thing. We find that really top people in every field love their work. Is they don't look at their work as, you know, and get through this. They love their work. And you can only be successful if you love your work, if you're doing something you really enjoy. Now, there will be mornings when you will get up, and so what they say is, I love my work. Say, I love my work. Whoa. Time to look for another field for some people here. All right. Try it again. Say, I love my work. Wonderful. Now, there will be mornings when you get up, and you will not say, good morning, God. You'll say, good God. It's morning. But you can get yourself cranked by talking to yourself in a positive way. Remember, 95% of your emotions are determined by how you talk to yourself. So you get up and you start saying, I like myself. I love my work. I like myself. I love my work. I like myself. I love my work. I like myself. And you can't say this 3 or 4 times without starting to smile. And you go downstairs and you're smiling. Well, what are you smiling about? Well, I like myself and I love my work. And you know something? When a person walks into your practice, they know if you like yourself and you love your work. They can tell. And if you've got people in your practice, I don't care how competent they are, if they don't like their work and like themselves, get rid of them because they are cancers. It'll destroy your practice. Because everybody who comes in touch with them says, I'll never come here again. I've been to practices where I've been sent and I've had one rude or difficult person, never went back. Never went back. Every time I thought of them, I had an association, a negative association. Would never refer them and never go back. Now, as Ed will tell you, the easiest customer to keep is a happy customer. Easiest place to get referrals is from happy customers. So I want you to ask, here's a great question. I'm going to get on with my subject. But here's a great question, is how many people does the average person know by their first name? Well, it's about 300, I think one of the studies said. Some people who are in public relations or sales know even more than that. But the average person knows 300. So let us say, just for fun, that the patient that is coming to your practice now, that this patient, only 10% of the people that he or she knows are patients for you, prospective patients for you. Only 10%. So how many is 10% of 300? It's 30. These are easy questions. I know somebody's using a calculator back there. And got it wrong anyway. So here's my point. So imagine every patient that comes to you has a neon sign right here. It says 30. And it's blinking. Blink, 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 30, 30, 30, 30 more patients, 30, 30, 30, 30. So when you talk to them and you deal with them and all they're saying, be nice to me, I'll send you 30, 30, 30, 30. Now, how long would it take you to build a $2 or $3 million practice if everybody that you met over the course of the next 2 or 3 years sent you 30 more patients? And the next patient that this person recommended comes in, blink, 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 30, 30, 30. And companies and practices that take this philosophy that every person I'm talking to is sitting there with a list of 30 people. All they're saying is, okay, let's see what you got. Okay, be nice to me. Just be nice to me. I got 30 people here. I'll give you 30 patients if you're nice to me. How nice would you be to someone if they had 30 patients to give to you? Would you call them up afterwards to see how you're doing? Would you thank them when they came in? Would you be specially nice? Would you come in and check on them and say, thanks for coming? Is there anything we can do? I mean, what would you do extra if somebody said, I've got 30 patients, just treat me nice. Take my love and advice, treat me nice, you know. Are you with me so far? Hey, how much did that cost? How much does it cost to do that? Zip. We're not even talking about spending thousands of dollars on things like that. So here's the final question I want to ask you. What is the most important part of this conference? I see my coming here was an emergency. I'm not surprised you brought me, Ed. I mean, this is a desperate situation. We'll see if we can save it. And the answer is what you do afterwards. It's the actions that you take as a result. And Ed mentioned that earlier this morning. It's what you do, and it's not just what you do, it's when you do it. And the time that you do it is immediately. Because we found that there's a direct relationship between how quickly you take action on a new idea and how likely it is you'll ever take action on any idea at all. If you take action immediately, then you'll get the results, you'll get feedback, you'll be able to self-correct. But if you put time off and put it off, then what will happen is all the energy will drain from it. How many people here would like to double their income in the next year or two? Yes. Good. Eminently possible because of the number of new patients that are coming onto the market. But how many times, what is the average number of times that a person tries on a new goal before they give up? Can you guess? The average number of times a person tries. The average is less than 1. Because most people quit before they try the first time. What they do is they say, I want to do that, I want to double my income, and I want to install that internet marketing program, and I want to do this, and I want to come up to gold level, I'm going to do all these things, but before I do, I'm really tired, and I need to take a break to a wonderful place called Someday Isle. And so they go to Someday Isle, and they go to Someday Isle in their mind, like remembering your last, vacation in the Caribbean or wherever it was, Someday Isle. And they drift off to Someday Isle, and that's where they go. And the bottom 80% of people in our population live on Someday Isle most of their lives. It's not that they lack ability or talent or opportunity, they just lack the energy to get on with it. So they go to Someday Isle. Now, who are they surrounded with on Someday Isle? Other people on Someday Isle. And what's the primary topic of conversation on Someday Isle? Favorite excuses. What's your favorite excuse? What's your reason for being here on the island? Well, my mommy didn't love me when I was growing up. My dad was really mean, and my first wife, she was a real bitch. And then my professor said I never amount to anything, and then my friend took my car and wrecked it, and then my stocks went down, and so I have got less in my 401k program. And it's like going in a hospital, the baby's nursery, wah, 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 wah. All these people on someday, they're going wah, and they're making up excuses and reasons. One of the great questions you have to ask is this, and it's a great question, is if your goal is to double your income, why isn't your income already twice as high? Why isn't your income already twice as high? Now, when you ask a question like that, say you want to be thin, why aren't you already thin? If you want to be fit, why aren't you already fit? If you want to be financially independent or out of debt, why aren't you already out of debt? And when you ask the question, you know what it triggers? It triggers your favorite excuse. It's either your reason, your ticket to someday I'll. This is my ticket to someday I'll. What's yours? Well, you're overweight. Well, I have a glandular problem. Yes, sir, you do. It's your mouth gland, and it's malfunctioning 5 times a day. You know, in other words, so it's our favorite excuses. So I'm going to give you one of the great secrets of life, and it's really important here in terms of dentist profits. And here's the great secret of life is vote yourself off the island. No more excuses. Get off the island. No more someday I'll try this, and someday I'll do that, and someday I'll give it a try. Wah, wah, wah. Do you know what the words I'll try mean? The words I'll try mean I'm going to fail in advance. I'm telling you I'm going to fail. So there's an excuse for failure in advance. Are you going to come to my party next Saturday night? I'll try. What does that mean? That means I ain't coming, baby. I'm giving you a signal. I'll try means I'm not going to do it. I'm going to fail. So don't ever say you'll try. Either do it or don't do it. Get in or get out. Vote yourself off the island. Make a decision. And what we found is a direct relation between how fast you take action on an idea and how likely it is you'll ever take action on any ideas. According to Aristotle and all the great thinkers for more than 2,000 years, virtually 95% of everything we do is habit. We have habits of getting up and habits of brushing our teeth. We have physical habits. We have habits of thinking. We have habits of action and so on. 95%. So if you were to take action over and over again, repeatedly on a new subject, what would you eventually develop? A habit. If you develop the habit of taking action, you become an action-oriented person. And you can start off with nothing going for you. You can start off with a limited education, or you have good education, start off with a new practice in a new town and everything else. But if you're an action-oriented person, and you try this and you try that, and you try this and you try that, and you try something else, and you learn, you get feedback, there's nothing to stop you from being successful. All successful people are intensely action-oriented. But it means that if you hear something here, take action on it immediately. If you hear something here, think, geez, that's good, go back and phone your practice and say, tell somebody, look, why don't we start on this immediately before I even get back? All right? But don't say, well, I'll try, think about it, sounds pretty good, but I got tickets to the island. What am I going to do with my tickets to the island? Oh, yeah, well, sell them to the guy next to you. He needs them. He probably uses them all the time. It's like the guy who gets up in the morning and says, I wake up every morning at 6 a.m. just raring to go, and then I force myself to lay there until the feeling passes. Well, that's what a lot of people do. They hear all these great ideas, and they say, wow, that's a great idea. I got to put some distance between me and that idea, or I may even implement it. Oh, my God. Then my income would go up. Oh, that's just too much to think about. Whoa, wait for me. I'm coming to the island. Got a spare seat? Anyway, so vote yourself off the island. Now, I didn't know any of this when I was coming up. I didn't know anything about the 80-20 rule. I started off humbly. I did not graduate from high school. I worked at laboring jobs for several years, and I can tell you the story. I finally got into sales. And in sales, I ran around, spun my wheels, and went in circles, and I made no progress. And after about 6 months of hard work, just barely hanging on, I noticed there was one guy in our company that was making 10 times as much as anybody else. But I was getting up early in the morning, 6 or 7 o'clock. I was in the parking lot when people came to work. I'd work all day long, knocking on doors, offices, and then evenings I'd go out and knock on homes and apartment doors. And I'd make a sale a week, maybe. And he would roll into the office at 9 o'clock. Customer would roll in. They'd have a nice little talk. Ho, ho, ho. Customer would sign a big check, sign the order. He'd go out and make a couple of sales before lunch, have lunch with another customer, make another sale, make some more sales, quit at 4:30. He was out selling the whole sales team together. And over time, by the way, I've worked with probably 1,000 sales organizations, and almost always there's one person out of 50 salespeople who sells as much as all of them put together. And they all started off at the same starting line. So I went and I asked him, I said, what are you doing differently from me? And he told me, and I did it, and my sales went up. And then I went back to him. I said, well, what else? He said, well, have you read anything on selling? I said, are there books on selling? I had no idea there were books on selling. So I began to read books on selling. Every morning I'd get up and read for 2 or 3 hours. I'd read in the evenings. And then, what about audio programs? I didn't know there were audio programs. I began to listen to audio programs. I just carried them around. I listened to them until they basically were recorded into my brain. And even today, I can hear the words of the first audio trainers that I listened to. And I began to attend seminars. And then, of course, the most important thing of all for you is to come to practice meetings like this. Well, practice development meetings. Well, what happens is my sales went up and up and up, and then they made me a sales mangler. And as a sales mangler, they said, look, whatever you're smoking, you should get some guys and share it with them. So I went out and I recruited people and I taught them what I knew, and their sales went up. And today I meet millionaires all over the world who are millionaires and multimillionaires who came to one of my seminars or listened to one of my programs and practiced those things and became successful. Which brings us to, and this is the reason I had this up here, I wanted to write down a couple of things. I know you like to take notes. Do you like to take notes? Say yes. Okay. Okay. So I'm going to be watching you. So no more going to the island. Okay, here we go. All right. So what I learned, which changed my life profoundly, is what is called the law of cause and effect. Now, the law of cause and effect is the reason that you're here. It's the reason that explains success and failure. It says basically, everything happens for a reason. For every effect, there's a cause. Even if we don't know, okay, what do I got here? Hold on a second. Okay, let's do a little zooming here. You can see I'm very good with these machines. Focus, okay, wide. How's that? Whoop. There we go. Thank you. So we just straighten this out a bit. Okay. It's like a kid with a toy at Christmas, you know, okay. So the law of cause and effect says that for every effect in your life, there's a cause, that everything happens for a reason. Even if you don't know the reason, there's a reason. Is somebody's practice twice as large as somebody else's practice? It's not because of you or your genetics or your DNA or your chromosomes or anything else. It's just because they're doing something different. That's all. So what you do is if you can define the effect that you want in your life, and then what you do is you trace it back to someone who at one time was earning less than you and who's now earning twice as much. And then you find out what they did. You come here and you ask Ed and his people and they'll tell you, and then you do the same thing. We say success leaves tracks. So you just do the same thing and you get to the same place. Which brings us to one of the great rules of success, is that if you do what other successful people do over and over again until it becomes a habit, nothing in the world can stop you from getting the same results that they do. And if you don't, nothing can help you. Now, this is a very important point to understand, is that all success skills are learnable. All practice, development, and management skills are learnable skills. All sales skills are learnable. All public relations skills are learnable. All physical, mental skills are learnable. You may not be able to play, you know, a classical violin or dump baskets like Michael Jordan, but all business and sales and management skills are learnable skills. And so therefore you can learn any skill you need to learn in order to achieve any goal that you want. And that once you understand that, so for me, that happened to me when I was 23, the dam broke. When I learned this law of cause and effect, I couldn't believe it. My God, you mean I could learn to be successful? I was a failure. I had holes in my one pair of shoes. The shoes were given to me. My size is about 10 and a half. These were size 12, so I wore them like swim fins. I had to kind of lean forward into them, so it went ka-flop, 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 ka-flop. I had one clip-on tie and one shirt that was wash and wear. I had to wash it out in my sink each night or it would stink. And I had one pair of pants. And I put on my little clip-on tie and my little shoes, ka-flop, ka-flop, ka-flop. And that was my beginning of my career. I could tell you within 25 cents how much money I had for the first 10 years of my adult life. And then I learned that you can be in the top 20% of salespeople. You just do what they do. So then I began to ask, what do they do? Well, over time, I learned this. And this is the great principle, is that thoughts are causes. Thoughts are causes. And this is the most important principle of all. This is the great discovery of the great philosophers, the great metaphysicians, the great mystics, the great mystical and religious and spiritual teachers. It's the foundation of psychology and the foundation of success, is that thoughts are causes. Your thoughts, however well put together, as we talked about earlier, determine what happens in your life. And conditions, the conditions of your life, are effects. So basically, you create your own life with your own thinking. Now, this is one of the hardest things for people to understand, is that their entire outer world is merely a mirror. It reflects back to them in absolute, complete accuracy what is going on inside. Now, much of what is going on inside is conscious, some of it is unconscious, but basically it's the way we think and see ourselves and feel about ourselves on the inside that determines our external world. And if you want to change anything on the outside, you have to change things on the inside. Now, my favorite equation is this: 1 to 1, is what's going on the inside determines what's going on the outside. Now, imagine a person looks in the mirror and they don't like the way their makeup is put on, or they don't like the look of their face, and they start to pound the mirror. Pound the mirror. They go and get a hammer. I got to pound this mirror. You'd say you must be crazy. The mirror is neutral. The mirror just reflects back to you what you're presenting to it. So if you want to change what was being reflected back, you have to change what you present to the mirror. Once you understand that, by the way, you move into the top 10 or 20% of thinkers in the world. The most important quality for leadership is responsibility, is to accept responsibility and say, I am where I am and what I am because of myself. It ain't my brother, ain't my sister, but it's me, oh Lord, standing in the need of prayer. Which brings us to the greatest discovery of all, which is that you become what you think about most of the time. You become what you think about most of the time. So what do you think about most of the time? What do you think about most of the time? Since your entire world is determined by what you think about, and especially by your thoughts emotionalized. Here's one of the great equations that goes back 2,000 or 3,000 years before Christ. Thought times emotion equals reality. In other words, a thought that is disconnected from emotion has no effect. An emotion that is not guided by thought is just chaos. But a clear thought backed by an emotion, and the emotion can be one of desire, I really want that, or it can be one of fear, I'm afraid of trying it. In either case, the thought times the emotion equals the reality. So if you could think of doubling your income and think of all the reasons why you'd like to do it and all the difference it would make in your life and your practice and what you could do for your family, and you get really excited about that, thought times that emotion is very healthy, and it begins to materialize, almost like a Polaroid photograph used to develop, begins to materialize in your reality. So thought times emotion equals reality. So you become what you think about most of the time. So what do you think about most of the time? By the way, this is a universal principle, but it's not always true, because if it was always true, every young man would turn into a young woman by the age of 20. And of course, fat people would turn into pizzas and alcoholics would turn into liquor bottles. However, I've worked with Tom Stanley and Bill Danko. And Tom Stanley and Bill Danko are the ones who wrote The Millionaire Next Door. And Bill Danko did most of the heavy lifting. He did 25 years of detailed research, surveys, analysis, attending meetings, and so on, to find out how self-made millionaires think most of the time with regard to money. And do you know what they think about most of the time with regard to money? They think in terms of financial independence. And whenever they have to make an expenditure or a decision with regard to money, they say, does this help or hurt? Does this add up or take away? Because everything counts. Now, what most Americans do is they want to be spend, and until their daddy takes their T-bird away. They want to have fun, and put it on credit cards and so on. So the average American, the bottom 80%, lives on 110% of their income. And now, unfortunately, the chickens are all coming home to roost, and their income was built on an inflated home value, and that has collapsed, and so now the whole house of cards is collapsing. The wealthiest Americans save 10 to 20% of their income from their first paycheck. They cut it off the top and they put it away, and they save it, and they build up cash reserves. The wealthiest Americans have 6 to 12 months in cash reserves that they never touch. Now, you could say, well, that's an awful lot, and I can't afford it. And I go, okay, I'm just telling you, that's how self-made millionaires think. Their net worth goes up at a rate of about 7 to 8% a year on their capital base. They don't try to make a killing in the stock market or in .coms and things like that. They save their money and they grow it carefully and safely. They're very attentive and thoughtful about their money. They're very frugal in their decisions. But what do they think about most of the time? They think about achieving financial independence. Tom Stanley talks about going to a conference of entrepreneurs that had been addressed by an economist the year before. And it was at the reception. And he heard people saying, What's yours? And he said, 8 and 4. What's yours? 10 and 2. What's yours? 6 and 3. What's yours? 18 and 2. What's yours? Made it in April. And he was asking people, what is this? What's yours? What's yours? What's yours? He said, well, last year we were taught by the economist to think in terms of how long we could survive financially if our income was cut off based on months and years. And so first thing we have to do is calculate how much would it cost me to survive for 1 month if I had no income at all. And then you multiply that times 12, and that's how much you would require to take 1 year off. Now, one of your great goals in life is to work by choice if you work at all. You want to have enough money so that you never have to work again. You won't ever stop working, by the way, because knowledge workers never stop working. They just do different things. If you stop working with your brain, you start to deteriorate very rapidly. But if you keep working actively with your mind, you can live till your 90s. Anyway, so then you calculate, and this is what self-made millionaires do, is they calculate their monthly rate, all right, times 12 to get their annual rate. I'll just write annual. And then they multiply that times 20, the number of years that they are planning to live after they retire, and that gives them what is called the number. Now, every person here, is one of your responsibilities as an adult, has to know your number. What is my number? And the number is the amount with which you could retire and never work again. And the interesting thing is, knowing your number, calculating your number, will increase your likelihood of achieving it by about 10 times. The likelihood of achieving it just soars astronomically because most Americans don't know what it is. Now, you guys are young and you're in your 20s and 30s and 40s and so on. You don't think about this, but self-made millionaires start to think about it at a very early age. And they hit millionaire status by the time they're 45. Others, making a fabulous living, end up at the age of 55 or 60 and they're broke. Because they just, just went to the island every weekend, never thought about it. So, do you want to be financially independent? Say yes. Then think about financial independence. Self-made millionaires never buy new cars. I can't say this in a public audience because there's always car salespeople and they beat me up afterward. But they buy cars that are 2 years old. All the depreciation has been driven out of them so that the prices come down. They buy expensive cars and they get them recertified so they get another 5-year warranty and they drive them 10 years until they fall apart. And all the extra money that people are out there buying cars every year and so on, all that extra money, what do they do with it? Yeah, they save it carefully, put it away, and so on. And as a result, they become financially independent. If all you did was buy one car every 10 years and took all the rest of that money and invested it, that alone would buy you 3, 4, 5 years of retirement. I mean, think about that because of the miracle of compound interest. Anyway, that's not my subject. So the University of Pennsylvania was commissioned by several large companies to try to find out the profile of high-performing men and women. Over a period of 22 years, they interviewed 350,000 people. They gave them psychographic profiles to find out basically how they thought in a variety of different areas, qualities, characteristics, virtues, values, and so on. And then they followed them for as long as 2 years and asked them, what do you think about most of the time? What do you think about most of the time? And what they would do is they would say, sir, what is your name? Skip. They would say, Skip, we're doing this research at the university. Would you participate with us? And Skip would say, well, I'm pretty busy. What's involved? You say, it's all we need is 10 seconds a week. And someone will call you randomly. You'll never know the time. And they just ask you, hello, Skip, what are you thinking about right now? What are you thinking about this very minute? And you can say, well, I'm thinking about this implant. I'm thinking about accounting. I'm thinking about playing golf on the weekend. It doesn't matter what the answer is. Just tell them exactly your top-of-mind thought. And then they tracked these, and they found that they began to break down in different ways. And then they began to slice and dice them by deciles. The bottom 10%, next 10%, all the way up to the top 10%. And they found that people in the top 10% think very differently from people in the bottom 80 or 90%. Now, can you guess what top people, since you are in the top 10% in your profession, can you guess what top people think about most of the time? Well, the answer is they think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. They think about what they want and how to get it most of the time. So I'm going to teach you a go-forward word, and this is the word that you're going to use for the rest of your career. This is the word that will guarantee that you'll get onto the fast track in life, you'll increase your income at a more rapid rate than the average person, and you take complete control of your life. And the word is how. Say how. Okay, from now on, when you want to double your income, the only question you ask is how. You want to double the number of patients coming to your practice, the question is how. You want to double your profitability, the question is how. You want to solve a problem, the question is How. Now, whenever you ask the question how, which is what leaders do, leaders are all how people. How do we resolve this? What do we do? What is our next step? What's our action? Non-leaders, followers, are passive people. Who did it? Oh my God, what's going to happen? What should we do now? They're like the little sheep running around in a circle. Wah, me, we. Whereas leaders say, all right, what's going on? Let's go, let's make a decision. What's happened here? Get the information, and so on. Now, when you ask the question how, it's like stepping on the accelerator of your own creative mind. You step and it goes, run, 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 and it throws off ideas, like those little lightning strikes in the cartoons or the light bulbs, and every idea is for an action that you can take when? Now. It's for an action that you would take now. Whenever you ask the question how, run, you get ideas. And the interesting thing is, they did a study at Harvard. They found that the greatest single predictor of success, especially financial success in life, is creativity. And creativity is designed by the number of ideas you come up with. And you'll find that the more ideas you come up with, because of the law of probabilities, the more likely it is you'll come up with a great idea. One of the most important things that you get with Ed is that you get exposed to a lot of ideas. Now, when you look at all the ideas that Ed gives you, there's no way a human being could apply them all when they get back on Monday, is there? So what you have to do is you have to pick and choose. The reason that Ed teaches you so many ideas, and I understand this, is because you never know which idea is going to be the right one for you at this time. So what you do is you get a lot of choices. It's sort of like going to a beautiful buffet. You're not going to eat everything, but you're going to look at the buffet and you're going to pick the things that you want or need or can use at this moment. So what we do here is try to give you a buffet of ideas that you can pick and you can fill your plate. And a year from now, you may come back and fill your plate completely differently. But it's the number of ideas that you have that largely determines, we say it's the quantity that determines the quality. And so the more things that you do that trigger ideas, the more words you know, and the more word concepts, the more business concepts you know, the richer is your inner vocabulary, the more and the better ideas you come up with. So it's really important. Every time you ask the question how, you get ideas for action. Wow. All right. Now, this brings me to a quick story I wanted to tell you. Once upon a time, there was a nuclear power plant that was suffering severe mechanical difficulties. And I'll put this here. And this power plant, power generation was down by about 40%. I had a nuclear engineer in one of my courses. He said, based on what you told me, the plant would be losing about $1.2 to $1.3 million a day in electricity generation if it was off 40%. So that's kind of the numbers that the plant management was dealing with, and they couldn't find it. They did everything possible to find, why is the plant slowing down? It was just running like sludge, if you like. And finally, they bit the bullet, they got a hold of their ego, and they called MIT and had them sent down one of the foremost nuclear power plant experts in the country, MIT and Massachusetts Institute of Technology. They came down, he came down, drove out to the plant, put on a white smock, nice gentleman, professorial, picked up a clipboard, and he began walking around this massive control room, taking notes and looking at the gauges and the barometers and amp meters and so on, and making calculations. And after about 2 days of this, afternoon of the second day, he said, that's the problem. And he got up in a chair and he took a big black marker out of his pocket and he put a big black X on the gauge. He said, that's it. He said, replace this apparatus and the whole plant will be back up to full power. Thank you very much. He put down his clipboard, took off his smock, thanked them for their time, drove back to the airport, caught his plane back to MIT. Well, they were all waiting. The engineering crew was waiting like runners at the gate for his judgment. Once he gave his judgment, wham, they all went together. They stripped it all down. And lo and behold, deep within this apparatus was a major mechanical malfunction that was not detectable from the outside. So they immediately went to work. They replaced it with all new equipment, put it all back together again, and assembled it, and then threw the switches, and the whole plant went up to full power. And they were so happy. They were high-fiving and cheering and patting each other on the back and so on. They were all happy. They were walking around with smiles so wide you'd think they'd swallowed a banana sideways. And they're all happy like this for another week until they received a bill from the consultant for services rendered, $10,000. Well, the general plant manager calls in the senior maintenance engineer, says, look at that. The guy comes out here, stands around for a couple of days, writes one X on one gauge, and sends us a bill for $10,000. Geez, that's almost as bad as dentistry. See, that's not very funny. I think I'll go and sharpen up my sense of humor with another group. Anyway, so he said, yeah, the guy comes out here and sees that's as much as we make in a month or two. Yeah, I mean, with a minute's worth of work, climbs up on the ladder, writes an X chart, says $10,000. I mean, that's outrageous. Yeah, we should make him itemize his account. Yeah, let's make him itemize his account. So the plant manager wrote back and said, dear sir, with all due respect, all you did was write 1X on one gauge. $10,000 seems like an awful lot of money for that little amount of work. Could you please itemize your account in a little more detail? So about 10 days later, they got a new bill back. It said, for writing X on gauge, $1. For knowing which gauge to write X on, $9,999. In other words, it wasn't the amount of physical labor, and this certainly applies to your profession. It wasn't the amount of physical labor, it's the amount of brain work that went into doing this, the precision brain work. And that introduced me to what we call the X factor. Now, the X factor is one of the most important things I ever learned. Oops. The X factor is the key to your success. The X factor is what's going to make you rich. It's made me and a whole lot of other people rich. The X factor is what is going to enable you to double your income and double your time off. Now, the X factor, sometimes we call this the focal point, is to determine where you are going to write the X in each area of your life. What is your X factor? Where do you create what is called the point of intensity? And what we know is that an X factor can be one of three things. It can be a goal. You can have a clear goal. Let's say, call this the focal point. Or it can be a measure. It can be a number, or it can be an activity. Now, in building our business, it has to be one of the three, but sometimes it can be a goal, double our personal income, and the measure is to either double the number of patients we have, or double the profitability per patient, or double the number of referrals we get, or it can be an activity. It's the way we treat the patient, what we do from the first phone call all the way through, which leads to the goal. But in any one of these three cases, or all of them, the critical word is clarity. In my experience, 95% of success is based on how clear you are about the goal that you're aiming at, how clear you are about the measure that you're going to use, or how clear you are with regard to the activity that you're going to engage in to achieve a particular goal. So always think of those, and what are they? Now, when we look at successful people, we find that successful people have focal points in the four critical areas of life. And the first critical area of life that I need to talk about is what is called, it has to do with income. This is really important to understand, is the average person who works for a living thinks about their income in terms of how much they earn in a year or a month. That's because when they first got a job, they were paid by the year and the month. This is a $25,000 a year job, you get $2,100 a month and so on. So people at the very beginning, first impression is they think in terms of annual income. Maybe they think in terms of how much they get per month. They're, of course, focused on how much they get every 2 weeks and so on, but that's how they think. Now, if you think like that, it's very easy to waste time, because what the heck, you're getting paid by the year. So if you waste time on Monday, catch up on Tuesday. If you don't do it on Tuesday, Wednesday's still there. Wednesday, hump day. Then there's Thursday. Then there's, thank God it's Friday. Oh, what the heck, you haven't got it done by Friday, just punt it into next week. And this becomes a habit. It becomes a habit. So in the world of work today, if you're running your own practice, 50% of working time is wasted in general. It's wasted mostly with idle chit-chat with coworkers, chit-chat, that has nothing whatever to do with the work. It's wasted in personal business, personal phone calls, extended lunches, extended coffee breaks, reading the paper, surfing the internet, personal business, going shopping during the daytime. It's the most amazing darn thing. 50% of working time is wasted. Now, if working time is wasted, it's not the fault of the employee, because they think in terms of annual income. What does it matter? They'll get caught up later. It's usually the fault of the boss, because the boss has not organized the work so that people are working all the time. They've enabled the work to be so sloppy that people can kill a lot of time. Many companies, when times get tough, what they do is they cut back. And they cut back on staff, and they double up. And people say, geez, I'm working hard now that we let so-and-so go. No, you're just working normal. You're just working all the time. And if people have time to sit around and idly chit-chat, it means your practice isn't busy enough or you have too many people. So just keep cutting back and loading up the work. And surprise, surprise, people will take it on. So what top people think about is not annual, but hourly. They think, how much do I earn per hour? and how much do I want to earn per hour? So let's say today you earn $100,000 a year, all right? If you take home $100,000 a year, then you divide that by the 2,000 hours that you work in your practice, and it works out to about how much per hour? Remember your teacher told you, cross off the zeros, divide. How much is it? Come on, quick. All right, use the calculator. That's right, $50. Jeez, several different answers. Wow, got a very creative crowd here. All right. So if you are a $100,000 a year person, you have to earn $50 per hour. You have to be doing work that pays $50 per hour or more. $50 per hour or more. Now, if you want to double your income to $200,000 per year, using the same equation, working 2,000 hours, how much do you want to earn now per hour? $100 an hour. So here's what top people do. In terms of income, they think in terms of their hourly rate. And they focus on doing the things that pay them their highest hourly rate. Which brings us to a great breakthrough concept. It's called the law of three. And the law of three is the key to doubling your income. The law of three says that in your practice, in any field, there's only three things. There's only three things that account for 90% of your income. Three activities. You can make a list of everything you do in the course of your practice, especially working with patients, but you'll find there's only three things that pay you 90% of your income. If you make a list of 10 or 20 or 30 things that you do in the course of a week or a month, then you ask this question. And this is the great question, because you must help every person who is responsible to you, who answers to you, answer this question as well. The question is, if I could only do one thing all day long, what one thing would contribute the most to my practice or to my income? If I could do one thing all day long, what one thing would it be? And in your case, it's probably actually working on patients. Second, if I could only do two things all day long, what would be number two? If I could only do three things all day long, what would be number three? And whenever we put people in from any profession through this exercise, they're astonished to find that there's three things go pop, pop, pop off the list. And everything else is a support task, an enjoyable task, a complementary task, a task that can be delegated, outsourced, downsized, or eliminated altogether. And it takes tremendous discipline to do this. Now let's see what I got here. Okay, whoops. Don't mess with it, all right. Okay. Now, I was reading an article by a Fortune journalist, and he interviewed the head of the Palo Alto Research Labs. It's called Palo Alto Research Center, PARC, called PARC. It's the most famous think tank in the United States. It was founded by Xerox when they were literally printing jillions of dollars, because they're the only company in the world that owned the xerography process. You could either type it yourself or use a Xerox. And they were selling machines by the tens of thousands worldwide. They had 2,000 sales offices worldwide, Xerox did. And they made so much money, they decided they would fund a research institute, a think tank, out in a little place called Santa Clara. Santa Clara is right in the heart, the bomb center heart of the Silicon Valley. It became basically the heart of Silicon Valley, was the devices and ideas that were spun off from Palo Alto Research Center. And he was asked recently, with these people, they're all top academics, Nobel Prize winners, top engineers, university professors, published authors, some of the brightest brains in the world, and there's about 100 of them. They all get together there, and they think and talk and kick over ideas, and they have the freedom to create. And they came up with a mouse, and they came up with a monitor, and they came up with a keyboard, and they came up with so many breakthroughs. So he was asked by the journalist, is there a difference in productivity? I mean, these are the top people in the world in their fields. Is there a difference in productivity? He said, yes, the 80-20 rule applies. He said, the 80-20 rule applies. He said, yes. He said, 20% of these people, smartest brains in the country or the world, are vastly more productive than the other 80%. And so the journalist said, well, why do you think that is? He said, well, it's probably because, I thought about this. Let me show you. And he took out an envelope like this. He took out an envelope, and he jotted down a couple of figures, and he said, that's the reason. And the journalist was so impressed. He said, could I have this? And the president of PARC said, sure. So he took it and he republished it in the center of the article and wrote the article around it in Fortune magazine. So let me tell you what it said. Here's the graph that he wrote. And the graph is like this. He said that you could take a graph like this, and then you have, this is the graph of time usage. This is the top 20% of tasks. This is the bottom 80% of tasks. And then here's what is called the curve of time usage. This is where you work on this graph. And then this is you. All right? This is you. And the question is, where do you work on your graph? And this is the great question that determines how well you do in life. It's real simple. Is do you work on things with high potential consequences or low potential consequences? So if you come in the morning and you work up here, the things that are in the top 20%, what happens is you'll be one of the most productive people in your field. Where every minute of time will produce as much as 5 to 10 times the value of things that you do down here. Because things in the bottom 80% often have no value at all. Because why? They have no consequences. If you do them or don't do them, you chat with your friends, you read the paper, you make a phone call, and so on. If you do these things, you could do them all day long and become brilliant at them, drinking coffee and surfing the internet, and it would have zero impact on your income. But the things up here can have enormous impact. So you have a choice when you begin work at every minute. You can decide where you're going to work on your curve. You can work at the top of your curve. You can work a little lower on your curve. You can work down here on your curve. You can work at the bottom of on your curve. Now notice there is a tendency in human beings that leads to failure, absolute guaranteed, and it's called the path of least resistance. The path of least resistance is the natural tendency for us, starting off as children, to do what is fun and easy and enjoyable and light and quick and short and so on, rather than what is hard and necessary and difficult and has big payoff. In other words, we have a tendency to do things that have no consequences rather than things that have serious consequences, because things that have serious consequences are usually hard. They require hard work and discipline. So if you make a habit, and notice that this is downhill. The path of least resistance says the natural tendency for us is to slip into, we didn't mean to, slip into doing things down here. But what do we know? We know that if we do something repeatedly over and over again, what do we develop? We have a habit. And low performers have the habit of starting off the day doing things of no value. In fact, a friend of mine just wrote a book, Time Management Specialist, and the title of her book is Don't Check Your Email in the Morning. Now, when you say that to people go, oh, are you kidding? I have to. I have to get up. I have to get up in the middle of the night and run and check, see if I've got a message. I got to run there in the morning and check. I got to check it on my PDA when I'm traveling around. I got to check it in the airport. I got to check my email. I got to check my email. I mean, somebody may have sent me a message. I've got to check my email. And you're just like junkies. You're like email junkies. I've got to have my fix. I'm starting to go into DTs because I haven't had an email check. She said, I remember a reporter for Forbes who went on vacation. He came back from vacation after a week, and he had 800 emails. And he said, there's no way, that's 100, 120 a day. He says, no way he could check all those emails and go back through the emails. I mean, it'd take him a whole day when you have a chance to get started. So he just punched delete, deleted them all. And people said, how could you do that? How could you delete your emails? He said, well, if they're important, they'll resend. And that was true. If they were important, they'd resend it. And most of the other ones, by the time he got to them, were too late to handle anyway. But instead of opening them up and reading them and thinking about it, and sending a little message and looking forward to seeing you too, suddenly it's 5 o'clock. And all you've done is check emails. So don't check your emails in the morning. Don't fall into the trap of coming down here. Now you say, well, my emails are important. Good. You are a dentist. Your time, is that $100 an hour work? Would you hire somebody and pay them $100 an hour to check your emails? Would you pay them $100 an hour to read newspapers? Would you pay them $100 an hour to go shopping in the shopping center next door? Anything you would not pay someone else your desired hourly rate to do, don't do it yourself. And say, well, but somebody got to check the email. I said, good. If you've got a secretary who will work for $6 an hour or $7 an hour, have her check the email. If she has any questions, she can come to you. After a few questions, she'll got it all figured out. She'll be able to go through your email and sort it in one. You know, I could be gone for a month and never check my email. Never have a problem. Why? Somebody else checks it. If it's not important, they'll resend. So, in other words, what I'm saying is you had to discipline yourself, because if you don't, you get into the habit of working on things of no value rather than things of high value. Oh, geez. How much time do I have anyway? 4 minutes. Geez. All right. Oh, are you enjoying this, by the way? All right. I wish I had 3 hours. But let me just give you the 4 other things that top people think about their hourly rate most of the time. Now, the second most important part of your life is your family. Is your family life. Now, how is it that top people think? Top people think in terms of FaceTime most of the time. This becomes the X factor. Is the X factor is where you put the emphasis in your life, and the emphasis is on face-to-face, one-on-one. Because there's nothing that can replace this, and there's nothing that's more important. There's nothing that leads to greater happiness and self-esteem and value. I was reading a book yesterday about a woman who was very, very unhappy because her husband never gave her any indication that he loved her and supported her, because he was always watching television. And you ask the husband, he said, sure, I love her. I think she's the most important person in the world. Well, then why don't you spend time with her? Well, I do. I'm in the house all the time. I come home after work every night. Well, no, that's not how women measure love. So the most important thing in your relationships with your spouse and with your children is FaceTime. How does a child spell the word love? T-I-M-E. How do children grow up? With high self-esteem and self-confidence. Their parents give them lots of FaceTime during their formative years. And as a result, they don't understand. They're not working it out psychologically. They just know that if the most important person in my world, this giant, is paying me all this attention, I must be pretty important. I must be really valuable. I must be a good person. And they grow up with high self-esteem and self-confidence, and they like themselves, and they like other people, and they're popular with their friends and everything. There's a great book called His Needs, Her Needs, or Her Needs, His Needs, whatever. And they talk about the 10 major needs that men have and the 10 major needs that women have, alternating back and forth. And all women know what man's first need is, so let's talk about hers. And her first need is for attention, affection, and respect. Attention, affection, and respect. Face to face, eye to eye, heart to heart, knee to knee, attention, affection, and respect. Those are the biggest need. And if she gets those needs fulfilled, then everything else will be fine. If she does not get those needs fulfilled, she's going to be unhappy. And men think, well, geez, I'm in the same house, I'm watching TV. No, the only time you are actually with the woman in your world is when you're face to face and giving them attention and listening to them when they talk and giving them affection and respect. How am I doing, ladies? Yeah? A lot of men sitting there like that. Bunch of crap, you know. Okay, so FaceTime, and there's a one-to-one relationship between how much FaceTime you spend and what quality of life you have. So it's really important that you don't have FaceTime accidentally. You plan it, you schedule it, you organize, and the busier you are, the more you have to make appointments. Now, I know you all have date night once a week. If you don't, from this day forward, always have one night a week that is as adamant and as untouchable, where you go out on a date exactly as if you were single, and you plan, you prepare, you get dressed, showered, you go to a lovely restaurant, and you spend the entire evening together. And you always sit face to each other, or next to each other, but never sideways, but always where you can look into the face of the other person. You do that once a week, and it's one of those wonderful things that a marriage can do. Does anybody here have date night every week? Is there anyone going to do it from now on? All right. Okay. Here's the third one, and I've already talked about the fourth. The third key has to do with health and fitness. Health and fitness. Now, with regard to health and fitness, we find there are two focal points. Focal point number one is waist size. Now, it's a really interesting thing. Your waist size, the fitness trimness of your waist is really important. It signals that you are healthy. It signals that you are interested. It signals that you have energy. It signals fitness and a whole bunch of other things. And the second part is what is called minutes of exercise per week. Now, you and I, because of our health system today, no matter what they say in the papers, we have the finest health system in the world. Is that because you're intelligent and knowledgeable about health, you can expect to break the average. The average is running about 80 years. Half of the population dies above, half dies below. You can expect to hit 90 or 95 years old. Your job should be to dance at your grandchildren's weddings and be killed by a jealous spouse diving out a window at the age of 93. You know. But these are the two focal points. Think about your waist size, and what you do every single time you look at putting something in your mouth, you say, will this help or hurt my waist size? And then combine that with exercise, and the required is going up each piece of research, but it's about 200 to 300 minutes per week. If you do 200 to 300 minutes per week, which works out to 30 to 45 minutes a day, and all you have to do for exercise is go for a walk. You don't have to work out for the Olympics. You just have to go for a walk. Get onto a treadmill, get onto a bike, go for a walk around the neighborhood. And if you combine that by going for a walk with your spouse or going for a walk with one of your children, then you get a twofer. and so on. So it's really important. The key, your ability to focus and concentrate on the most important thing you can do at any given moment is the key to streamlining your life, to dramatically increasing your productivity, and to doubling your income. So if you do these things, practice the law of three, spend more time face-to-face with the most important people in your life, and work on the 20% of things that have the greatest potential consequences, not only will you feel fabulous about yourself, but you'll get more done, you'll get more done faster, your self-esteem will be higher, you'll make more money, you'll be richer, people will want to take pictures with you when they meet you at conferences, and you'll come to my seminars again in the future. Thank you very much. God bless you.